Hello again, everybody, and welcome to our experiment in Bio 110 lab on herbivory. And today's experiment is entitled Frenemies. Ako lang din yan. Okay, ako lang din gumawa niyan. We're gonna find out in a bit. For the guide that we're gonna have today, it's pretty simple. Just want to introduce you to the ones that really run the world, why veggies aren't exactly vegetables, and then why. Lahat naman ng lessons natin sa biology, we have to know why we are learning these things, right? It's not just for the sake of cramming a shit ton of information in your head. No, we want you to actually have life lessons that you learn from these things. And finally, we head to your activities. Okay. First and foremost, when we say who run the world? Plants. Who run the world? Plants. Yes, because they do. They actually do. They perform what we call many different types of ecosystem services. Yan yung mga medyo inward ngayon when we talk about sustainability and climate and whatnot. Many different species on Earth not just have direct benefits to human beings, but also they perform a lot of roles in nature that we really cannot quantify with money. For one, there are direct services. They give us our food. Can you imagine? Tayo, animals tayo, we are consumers. Like I said before, hindi ka pwede mag-sunbathing dyan sa labas and then magkakaroon ka na ng pagkain. No. Somebody has to do that for you, and it is probably a plant. Okay? Kahit na sabihin mong carnivore ka, you don't eat vegetables. Yung mga kinakain mong beef, pork, chicken, at some point they ate plants or they ate stuff that ate plants.
To a certain degree, vegetarian tayong lahat. Yes.
So they provide us with our food, and also, obviously, very important is they provide us with oxygen. Plants do, clean our air. So malaking bagay na nandyan sila. Kasi, una, wala tayong makakain, and most likely, wala tayong mahihinga. They are also what we call doctors or chemists, in that they provide us with medicine. You see, the beautiful thing about plants is that they produce a lot of different kinds of compounds that we have somehow extracted for our personal use, particularly for medical use. Another thing is that they are what we call engineers, because they create environments. They quite literally shape an environment. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't know what kind of animals would live there. So it's really, they're like the first colonizers. Kumbaga sila yung makakahanap ng patch of land or patch of space, and then they're like, let's invade this place and let's establish, and boom, let's build this place. And then, nang dahil sa kanila, nagkakaroon ng parang mga turista. So isipin nyo, parang tayo yung turista, yung mga hayop. Uy, may mga ganito dito, punta tayo dito. Yan. Pero sila yung talagang nag-establish ng isang lugar. They create what we call microclimates. Kaya nga, di ba pag tumayo ka sa ilalim ng puno, papansinin nyo, uy, lamig dito ah. If we talk about ecosystems, for example, mostly, yung pangalan ng ecosystem is based on the type of plants that you find. Grassland, edi grass. Forest, edi puno. Deciduous forest, edi mga puno na naglalagas yung dahon. It's mostly that ecosystem names are based on them. Wala naman tayong nakikitang ecosystem name na pangalan is parang tipong bird paradise or cow ranch. Or, di ba? It's not an ecosystem name. Hindi animals yung nagde-determine what makes a place a place. It's the plants. Tapos tayo, nakikibagay lang tayo, sumusunod lang tayo. The wonderful thing about plants is that they're not vegetables. And by vegetable, we mean like in a figurative sense. Di ba alam yung mga tipong taong mga terminally ill, yung mga may cancer, and then they're like, nandun lang sa hospital. And we call them vegetables, di ba? So we kind of always say, oh, I don't want to be a vegetable. Yan, ayoko na, hindi na ako makagalaw, ganyan. It's because we always sort of think that plants are just there and they don't move and they don't do anything. They just kind of capture the energy of the sun and grow. But actually, they're doing a lot more than that. They observe and they also act in response to whatever it is that they observe. So, an example, may mga halaman na yung dahon nila kapag gabi, nakatiklop. Yung bulaklak nila, nakatiklop. So, they sort of have an idea what's going on in the outside environment. So, they observe and they act accordingly. Hindi naman totally helpless yung plants. There are some plants that have somehow evolved or have changed over time based on the predators that actually consume them. They are able to receive stimuli and they're able to actually act on these stimuli. So they're not passive organisms at all. They're not vegetables. At least not the way that we would connote what vegetables are, just these kinds of things. No, they're not like that. They're very dynamic creatures. Why do we have to know about these plants? So what? Well, let's try to just sum it up into 3 main points. Eat, pray, live. A lot of the medicines that we use were actually derived by plants. Mapapansin niyo, di ba, kung meron kayong mga alagang pusa or aso, parang kung pinakawalan nyo sila at nakahanap sila ng damo or some type of plant, they start chewing on the grass or they start eating plants. In a way, they're sort of self-medicating. May nararamdaman sila and they know that they would go to a plant for this type of medical service. So yun nga yung mga sinasabi nating nature's pharmacists. And apart from that is, of course, they supply us with our food. Again, the energy from the sun, this somewhat limitless or seemingly limitless energy from the sun can only be utilized if we have plants. If they weren't there, we'd be fucking dead. We wouldn't exist at all. Next point, pray. It gives us this deeper sense of appreciation. I think if you look at how interconnected we are to the rest of organisms on Earth, no, not just to a plant, not just to the plant that you eat, or not just to the animal that you ate that ate another plant, but ultimately tracing where the energy comes from, where this flows, you realize that, a part of you is very much the sun. Like you are the sun. You are pretty much the baby or the copy of the sun. Yung kanta ni Pocahontas, yung Colors of the Wind, at first you're like, oh, it's a Disney movie, it's gonna have some silly, wonky lyrics, but it's very profound in that sense that you realize how much connected you are to the earth. And live in terms of just the place that we live. When you take on projects on reforestation, is it enough na, magtanim tayo ng halaman? The way that we get to know plants in this level, that they can have certain structures or certain properties that allow them to thrive and provide certain services better than others, we can make better decisions on what species of plants should we grow, or what species would thrive in this area, kaya nga may mga nababagay o naaakma sa iba't ibang lugar. We can make better decisions when we know a little bit more about plants and how they form relationships with animals. Plants are kind of like our frenemies in that sense, because in some ways they can actually kill us. We can be poisoned by plants, but at the same time we can also be healed by plants. And frenemies also in the sense that we're competing for the same resources, essentially. If plants maybe could express their feelings, they would be like, oh, fuck these humans, they're eating us for food. I want to survive. So let's go to your experiment proper. Ayoko na rin naman tong patagalin. First, individually, just pick a plant and observe. And the next thing is to look for signs of herbivory. So titignan ninyo yung dahon or just parts of the plant na talagang nakita nyo parang kinain ng hayop. Hopefully you have at least 5 samples. And then, yes, so yun nga, selfie and then share. Share with your group based on the data that you have all collected. Try to find out what pattern is it that you see. Are there certain leaves na mas kinakain kumpara sa iba? From there, you try to formulate a sort of proposal, scientific proposal, to test this finding or this pattern that you may have observed that may be related to herbivory in a sense. Ganun lang siya kasimple. And again, I'm always available for online consults if you have any other questions. Maraming salamat po, and I hope you guys enjoy the activity.